We had an interview scheduled outside of the Budget Committee hearing, but then I was alerted of a rules change and a very bizarre, undemocratic rules change. But you don't agree with that rule, do you?
Well, no, I think what we've been doing works fine. You have decorum, but this is a new rule. I'm sure I just can't imagine it standing actually.
Okay. Well, let's get back to what we were going to talk about, of course, which was this hearing earlier with Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin. He released a report last night suggesting that we need to deregulate some of the financial regulations. Do you agree with that? What did you make of the hearing today?
Oh, totally. But here's the number one takeaway. On one of my questions, I said, if you were king for a day, would you redo Dodd-Frank? He said yes, but before I did that, I would redo the budget process. We've been screaming for 4 years that the budget process is broken, particularly in the last year and a half. We've been working to change that, and he commented on that today. He also commented that the White House is working on some executive orders and regulatory changes inside the Department of Treasury that would actually reverse some of the more onerous capital formation rules inside Dodd-Frank, which I think would benefit capital flow in small banks and in regional banks.
Well, let's talk about capital flow, particularly capital requirements, because there has been some discrepancy or some debate rather, that in order to attract moderate Democrats to get on board with some of these proposals, perhaps the SIFI designation language might have to be tweaked a bit. Do you agree with that?
Well, I think it may have to get their support. But here's the thing. I mean, we're unilaterally chasing Basel III, as you well know. You talk about that more than anybody, and I just don't think that's correct either. We're shutting down capital formation. This 70-year economic miracle of the last 70 years is really caused by innovation, capital formation, and the rule of law. Well, in the last 8 years, we've really punitively shut down capital formation, where jobs are created, by the way, and that's small banks. And so I think the administration is on that. I think we'll see coming out in the next week or so things that will relieve the pressure on that and let capital flow again at the places where jobs can be created.
Senator, earlier today I spoke with Senate Banking Committee Chairman Mike Crapo just about the timeline of when we could see the Senate Banking Committee and the Senate address Dodd-Frank reform. Last week, the House voted to repeal and to fix or to alter the 2010 Dodd-Frank reform law, but it seems that it's stuck in the Senate. So what is your message to investors, to Main Street, to Wall Street, about community bankers, about when this actually is going to get done?
Well, there are two things. One is what's going to happen in the Department of Treasury. I think that's going to happen in weeks. We're going to see something coming out of the administration in the next few weeks about some relief coming from the Secretary of Treasury and the administration. With regard to the Senate, I agree totally. We need to address that here. There are some parts that need to be in there, but basically the protection against the abuses that we saw in 2008-9 period are there. But the problem I have is the overreaching punitive nature of some of the regulations in Dodd-Frank and how that's shutting down capital formation in small banks.
So we're hearing that the president is in the next week or two going to announce his Federal Reserve nominations. But what you just said, in the next couple of weeks we could expect more. What specifically could the White House do on this matter through executive action?
Well, the first thing is capital requirement.
They can do that through the White House?
We hope they can. I mean, they haven't said that yet, but I'm hopeful that will happen. The idea that we're going to unilaterally chase Basel III, though, 3% capital reserve to 6%, and now going to 7.5% on the way to 12%. And no other signatory country has done anything yet. So I'm really concerned about our competitive position relative to the rest of the world.
Can they do anything on the CFPB, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau?
Well, I don't know. We didn't talk about that today. He had no testimony on that today.
All right, lastly, of course, Attorney General Jeff Sessions testifying.
Yeah.
What are you going to be looking for? Does this Russia sanctions bill help move the matter forward? Does it bring it closer to a resolution? And what do you want to hear from the Attorney General?
Well, I think the sanction bill stands on its own. We know there's evidence that Russia had nefarious activities here. But first of all, Attorney General Jeff Sessions has my utmost confidence. I respect his integrity. He actually wanted to have an open hearing, so I'm anxious to hear the testimony and see what comes out of that. I also want to find out what Russia's part was in this. Now, we have no evidence that they changed any votes, but I don't like the fact that they were in here hacking the DNC and the RNC vote.
Well, I think a lot of people want to know what is Congress going to do to prevent that from happening again, because if it doesn't happen to political institutions, what happens when it happens to financial institutions? Right. What happens when that hacking happens to medical institutions or college universities? So what, beyond just sanctions, what are lawmakers in the White House doing to better protect Americans from cyber attacks?
Well, that's a great question, and I tell you, you hear it in the Armed Services Committee, you hear it in Judiciary, you hear it in Commerce. Look, this is a multifaceted issue here. We know that our kinetic advantage is still there relative to our adversaries and other people in the world. With regard to cyber and space, that advantage is declining, and we know that. And so what we're doing now, we have the cyber effort going on behind the Cyber Warfare Center that's been created. Just in the state of Georgia, we have 2 brigades of Army cyber warriors being put together, the Center of Excellence down there. So this is a multifaceted issue, and I think it's gotten the attention of the leaders, and I'm anticipating that we're going to see a lot more progress over there in the next 6 months to a year.